In the present day, society is slowly making its way into having a more inclusive space for the LGBTQ plus community. But for some conservative societies, such as the Philippines, members of the community are having a hard time feeling accepted or acknowledged for their right to love whom they love. There is still such a heavy stigma that conservative Filipinos have against the LGBTQ+, especially when it comes to family. What keeps these two parties from hearing each other? And in what way does religion's power act as a bridge or hindrance in linking both sides?
For me, because the Philippine society, Philippines in general is a very Catholic dominant country. It's easy to tell that a lot of our values are ingrained in our beliefs, and how that affects the LGBT community is there tends to be like a sort of power struggle. So a lot of people think that when you're part of the LGBT community, you automatically disrespect God, you automatically sin, and that in a way makes you not capable of functioning in society. So I guess it's like very negative impact. I love being a Catholic. The thing is, a lot of people think, no, just because I'm bi, that's my entire identity. But I don't see the point of that. I'm more than just my sexuality. And I feel like growing up in a very conservative family, I understand why they're fearful. But at the same time, the approach is quite different. And like for me, I had a spiritual director, and my spiritual director would always tell me na there's nothing wrong with being bi, there's nothing wrong with being gay. It's more on the actions that you do, the actions that you commit that make you, that define like what kind of person you are. So it does not necessarily have to do with your sexuality. I mean, like there's this quote I saw online where like a part of it was like saying, straight people don't go to heaven just because they're straight. The same way as gay people don't go to hell because they're gay. Actually, I was outed by my parents. I was dating someone and my mom looked through my messages. So I never got the chance. When my mom found out, she got mad at me and she told my whole family. But it's also like, for me, outing yourself is one of the biggest things. Because it's not just telling people what you are. It's admitting to yourself by telling people. I was going through a lot, especially since I didn't have my friends to talk to. And I couldn't rely on my brothers, obviously. My parents, way worse. And then I got sent to conversion therapy. Religion was the thing I held on to during the whole thing. In the sense that I held on to prayer. I held on to not the institution, but my faith. But the thing is, you can't necessarily work on your faith without the institution. So, as much as there's a lot of misconceptions about both the Catholic Church side and and the LGBT community side, parang there's also that sense of trying to find the middle ground. It's kind of a lot of fear lang on both sides. That's why people don't want to understand religion. It's misinformation. Education can fix it. Education in the sense that the church has to be more understanding of the situation. And actually the church is. It's just in the different communities, you can't tell, especially with a lot of lay ministers saying that they know better than priests. The thing is, they don't. This is why we have that authority kind of thing. Because priests, nuns, consecrated women, man, they study these things. They study theology. Lay ministers try to get that kind of... They try to get in the way of these kinds of things. They think they don't need to bring it up with people of authority. And it kind of sucks. Like, if you refuse to understand the LGBT community, then how do you plan on bringing them closer to God? And goes with LGBT community. With all these years of like abuse and all that stuff, like I know it sucks obviously, and you want the church to understand. Actually, no. In this generation, it's kind of hard because they don't care, especially in the secularization of our generation. It's kind of hard because you tend to see that faith doesn't play a role in everyone's life anymore, or at least it doesn't play as big of a role. So I guess in that sense, there should be a willingness on both sides, not just education, but yeah, like that want to understand each other. They're not asking for a Catholic union. They're asking for just the same rights, the same benefits and like effects that having a marriage has. But yun nga, like it's great that people are demanding these things. It's great that they're asking for change. In just a span of a few years, parang everything's changing so fast. And I feel like it is possible in the near future. For me, like, yun nga, with being shunned by a lot of people, and most especially my family, as much as that hurt me, I also realized that I can't just cling on to people, but I will always cling on to God. Not in the sense that I'm gonna question the authority. Don't be afraid to like talk to someone that's religious or someone that wants to learn. You're always gonna have that one person that you can talk to that understands both your love for God and your need to be open about your identity. But you also have to make sure that your sexuality isn't your entire identity. Because honestly, you're more than that.
Of course, we all know that the Philippines is a predominantly Catholic country, right? Now, the simple answer to that is it's becoming less and less, like the influence of the Catholic Church on how the society, the Philippine society, would accept the LGBTQ community. And it's obvious because of the growing, I think in my opinion, the growing lack of influence from the Catholic Church on society itself. I think more and more, the church is just one of the many voices. And if I talk about the church, there are ways of talking about the church. Talking about the bishops and cardinals. Okay. If I'm talking about the bishop and cardinals, we would say more and more their influence is just to be speaking out, and their voice is just one of the many voices people will hear. In that sense, I would say that the influence of the church would just be one of the many voices speaking out on how to handle this question about the LGBTQ community. In the issue of LGBTQ community, how do we handle them? Yeah. I'm just saying that and you will see later that when you say the Catholic voice about LGBTQ community, you then have to say, which voice? Because there are many opinions about the LGBTQ community, even within the Catholic Church. If you ask CYA come together as leaders and say, okay, let's think about what to say. We've not done that yet. There is no like one statement. This is a complicated issue. It is not, it doesn't, you cannot give one simple 2-paragraph explanations of what you think about this issue. And that's one thing very clear. Okay. Second, it's also very clear that what we want to communicate is more the message of respect and acceptance and non-discrimination, which is forgotten as a very important part of what is taught in the church. I mean, it's part of the catechism. It's really there. People who claim that they are experiencing same-sex attraction it's in the catechism. They should experience respect and acceptance. Very clear. At the same time, in the same breath, there's also some explanation why homosexual acts are wrong. But in order for you to understand why they're wrong, you also have to understand the context of where it's being taught. I mean, like a controversial statement that's in the catechism is the definition that homosexual acts are a disorder. Right? I mean, anybody in his right mind, when you hear that you know what your experience is a disorder, no matter what you do, you cannot make that sound nice. But then, of course, you have to understand that that particular teaching, the only reason why they're explaining it as a disorder, because they were just explaining the order of family life. That's really it. We're saying that in the context of, and they mentioned other disorders in family life, adultery, even the divorce, the value of the marriage being as a permanent institution. So within that whole set of teachings about family is this other teaching also on homosexuality. And to make a one-sentence statement about what we stand for is very difficult. So how do you say in several paragraphs that, hey, we understand your situation. This is a challenging experience. We want to be with you. To communicate LGBT, we want to be with you. We want to figure out how you would live a good life. And because we are also struggling with our own struggles, maybe different from yours, how do we help each other? So, how do you communicate that kind of statement at the same time still say, okay, there are certain things that are not totally right in some of the things that some LGBTQ communities are promoting. So, like one clear thing, again, you can quote on this. If an LGBTQ community is telling me, hey, promiscuous living, having sex with 700 partners, 500 partners is a good way of life. Okay. Not so sure. That I think is very clear. Something that some of the LGBTQ communities would say, Mr. Roncal, we are with you. That is not good. So exactly what we are talking about is a very complicated thing. So we would rather say, hey, let's figure out a way of communicating a message of acceptance, respect, at the same time figuring out how do we also figure out for people to say that they struggle and they identify with themselves with the LGBTQ community. How do we live a good life? What does it mean to be a good person?
Okay, so there's this notion, diba, na since the Philippines is a Catholic Christian country, there's a hard time in integrating the LGBTQ community. But when you look at the surveys, it's a mixed figure kasi, it's a mixed bag. The Philippines is actually one of the more accepting countries, but at the same time, it's one of the more religious countries. So when you look at that survey, the Philippines is actually an outlier because the Philippines is both a religious country, a very religious country, but it's also an accepting or a more tolerant or a more open country when it comes to the LGBTQ plus community. So, yon. And when you go to the ground level, when you ask the ordinary bakla sa tondo, makikita mo mas accepting pa doon in the research that we're doing. Initial data siguro, maririnig mo na there are even some priests when yung mga bakla, tinatanong nila yung mga pare, merong nabubuli sa akin, gano'n, sabihin ng pare, ay paglaban mo lang yun. Make sure to defend yourself, gano'n. So, it's a mixed bag, actually. Siguro, what we're talking about is what impact does religion have in the integration of the LGBT community in Philippine society? Perhaps we can talk about the laws that are being proposed in Congress right now. As you know, diba, you have two pieces of legislation that are being considered. Number one is the SOGI Equality Bill, or the Anti-Discrimination Bill, diba, before, and some sort of a civil unions bill as well. So dalawa yun. Anti-discrimination bill is being refiled in the 18th Congress, and we see that there's a lot of opposition coming from conservative Christian elements. So you have some conservative Catholic groups, some of them are lay groups, many of them are lay groups actually. You have the evangelicals, no? Members of the evangelical born-again groups who are actively opposing LGBTQ integration. So, for 20 years, kasi 20 years na nilang pinaglalaban itong mga legislation na to, you see that one of the most active opposition talaga comes from these conservative Christian groups. So, when it comes to the legal front, we see an active lobbying by these conservative Christian groups against this legislation that aims to integrate or to end discrimination against LGBTQ people. But of course, yung mindset din you were talking about Foucault and things like that. Iba rin yung impact siguro nung teachings ng church when you interview Christian queer people. Parang you ask them about same-sex marriage, amazingly, parang some of them, quite a number of them actually say, hindi ako approve dyan kasi naririnig ko sa simbahan na marriage is for man and woman only. Gano'n, sa mga ganun bagay. So you can see yung ganung klaseng katuruan, nananatili yun. So it runs deep in our culture, in our psyche. Christianity is a spectrum. There are more conservative ones, there are more progressive ones. It's more progressive part of Christianity. There are actually churches that bless same-sex marriages. Diba? There are actually churches that affirm LGBTQs and celebrate them. And they've joined the Pride Parade. The Pride March pala in Marikina, no? Churches such as the Iglesia Filipina Independiente, Naglipayan Church. These are churches that affirm LGBTQs. Diba? And that began because of dialogue. No? Pag sinabi mong dialogue, kasi minsan pag dialogue or pag pinag-uusapan ng mga ganitong topics, parang, okay, so these are the teachings of the church or on LGBTQs. Any questions? Ganun. Parang lecture. Hindi siya dialogue. Pag dialogue kasi, okay, upo tayo, sige, ano yung mga hinanakit mo, ano yung mga hinanakit ko, ano yung mga concerns mo, ano yung mga concerns ko. Pag-usapan natin. So, level yan. Hindi yan prof or father, diba? And member. Hindi ganun yung, walang ganung power dynamic. Spaces for dialogue are very important. No? The first document that the Vatican released on gender and transgenders, gano'n. So, walang nagbago. Mga kinausap lang nila doon, theologians and philosophers. Bakit hindi ka nausap yung mga transgenders? Bakit hindi ka nausap yung mga social scientists who have been studying about gender for the longest time? Diba? So yun. So, when you engage in dialogue, make sure to include those whom you're talking about, diba? Make sure to include the gays, make sure to include the bis, make sure to include the queer people, diba? So, yeah. What does it mean to actually fight for their rights? Diba? I think that's a question that we Filipinos should think about, no? Na yung mga karapatan din ba na pinaglalaban ng mga LGBTQ ay mga karapatang pantao rin. Diba? At nagsisimula yun siguro sa pagtanggap na ang LGBTQ ay kapwa. Sila ay kapwa-tao rin.